This session introduces Buddhism, the last of the major religions we'll be discussing in this course, and a religion which is very closely related to Jainism. It comes out of North India around the exact same time as Jainism. Siddhartha Gautama, the Buddha, according to the earliest Buddhist scriptures, said to have been a contemporary of Vardhamana Mahavira, the founder of Jainism. According to the tradition, the Buddha is born to a noble family in what is today Nepal, here in the far northern portion of the Indian subcontinent. His father is a regional king. His father, whose name is Shuddhodana, is kind of the provincial king, the king of a small region way up here. And the account of the conception of baby Siddhartha is that his mother, Maya Devi, had one night a dream that a white elephant flew into her belly, and she woke up knowing that something very auspicious had happened. White elephants were signs of good luck and auspicious beginnings in ancient India. And in this episode, Maya Devi has in fact miraculously conceived. So there's been a virginal conception of the baby Siddhartha. And after a period of 10 months, she goes to the royal park to give birth, as was customary. And here, baby Siddhartha one-ups Jesus, because not only was baby Siddhartha miraculously conceived, but he is too miraculously born. Maya Devi's hip opens up, and baby Siddhartha comes tumbling out of her hip. So he's not born in the normal way, but the idea is that he has this extra pure sort of birth. So he also has this sort of miraculous birth. And not only that, but he can also already walk. So he tumbles out of her side, lands on his feet, and takes 7 steps. And as he lifts his foot after each step, a white lotus magically blossoms beneath it. So he takes 7 steps. And by this time, the gods have gotten wind that something very special is happening. And so they come down to pay their respects to this miraculous baby Siddhartha. And they see that not only he can walk, but he can also talk. So after he takes his 7th step, he lifts his finger skyward and issues his first earthly proclamation. Not really. His first earthly proclamation is Chief am I in all the world. So there's a very special baby on our hands, little miraculous baby Siddhartha. So the nursemaids take Siddhartha back to the palace and swaddle him and present him to King Shuddhodana. And they say, King, you better check this out. Very special baby. So King Shuddhodana says, well, wow, that's very special. And he summons the Brahmin soothsayers, the Brahmin fortune tellers, who are experts in reading omens and also the birthmarks of babies to determine their future. And so the Brahmin soothsayers come and they look at baby Siddhartha, he does have these peculiar bodily features. He has little circular divots on the bottom of each of his feet, and his arms are kind of extra long, and he has a little bump on the top of his head. He has all these like little sort of like little anomalies. And they huddle up and get together and whisper among themselves, and then they come back to King Shuddhodana and they say, King Shuddhodana, you have on your hands a very special baby. You have what we call a Chakravarti baby, a wheel turning baby, someone who is going to grow up to be a Chakravarti, a turner of the wheel, which can mean either of two things, because a chakra, can be in either of two senses. The first sense is the wheel of the law of dharma as social duty, the way that we saw it in the Bhagavad Gita. A turner of the wheel of dharma in this sense is a great Hindu king, someone who keeps society running and who keeps everyone doing their job according to their dharma, the caste that they're born into, as they should, right? So in this sense, the wheel represents like the wheel of social order. That's what it means to be a Chakravarti king. And King Shuddhodana, he really likes this idea. He really likes option number one, because he is himself a proud Kshatriyan, and he would really like for his son to grow up to be a great king, a greater king even than him. And to be a complete Chakravarti, you're someone who actually rules the entire subcontinent of India. And so he's like, wow, I really like that prophecy. That's great. But wait, what's Chakravarti number two? What's the other thing he could grow up to be? And the soothsayers explain, well, the other thing that he could grow up to be is a turner of the wheel of dharma in the sense of religious law, not social duty, but the laws of human psychology that allow one to escape suffering and rebirth. And so the problem with being Chakravarti number two is that you can only be one of these two types of Chakravartis. If you're a great king, you can't be a great renouncer and a great religious teacher. And if you're a great religious teacher, you can't be a great king because it requires that you give up everything in quest of the truth, and everything in order to be a full-time teacher of the truth, right? So you have to give up your money, your family, your status, even your caste status as well. You have to sort of completely cut yourself off from worldly life. And this is something that Shuddhodana is much less keen on. He wants his son to be a business major in Mumma and not a philosophy major in Cooper Hall. So he says, okay, well, thanks a lot for the information. And he does everything in his power as baby Siddhartha is growing up to goad him towards the Chakravarti one path. So he wants little Siddhartha to only see the pleasures of royal life and for him never to get any ideas that he should pursue anything else. So from the time Siddhartha is a little kid, he only has the nicest toys. He has entertainers who are there and he just claps his hands and they come out and they play instruments and dance for him. He has cooks on staff who cook him whatever he wants. The ancient Indian equivalent of mac and cheese and hot dogs, I suppose, if you're 4 years old. And his grandpa, his there's he's not only allowed to see physically attractive people. So Siddhartha is very careful about who he allows in the palace. Grandma and grandpa, get out of here. From the time that Siddhartha is 16, his dad builds him three palaces of his own, one for each of these three seasons in Nepal. And these palaces he staffs, of course, with butlers and cooks and harems of 500 dancing girls each. So these girls, every night, they have these parties and they play their lutes and they feed him grapes and they give him cups of wine and whatnot. And so Siddhartha learns from a very young age that it's good to be the king, right? So this is how he grows up. His dad is also very careful to curate his experience every time he goes out from the palace. So he's allowed to go out and go along in his royal chariot on the streets of Kapilavastu, but his dad makes sure that his footmen go on ahead of the chariot and they clean up the road and they put nice banners on the trees and they sort the people lining the road in order of attractiveness, right? Attractive people in front. So he's never like really experienced the world. By the time he's 29, Siddhartha has a beautiful wife, Yashodhara, and a 1.5-year old son named Rahula. And it is only when he's 29 that Siddhartha says, you know, my life is pretty great, but my dad has never actually let me go out unsupervised, and I wonder if there's anything I'm missing. And so he says, all right, I'd really like to sneak out and see what's really beyond the gates of the palace without my dad knowing and without him having any chance to go out and clean things up. So he designs with this guy Channa, who is the keeper of the stables at one of his palaces, to steal a single horse and buggy and to sneak out the back door. And so they do this one afternoon and they're going along the back roads of the city of Kapilavastu when they come across something that Siddhartha has never seen before. They come across a hunchback old man who's hobbling down the side of the road, walking with a cane, and this really shocks Siddhartha. He says, Channa, what is that? And Channa just looks and he's like, I know you've lived a little bit of a sheltered life, Siddhartha, but that's an old man. And everybody gets old, including you. And one day you're going to get old, and sometimes being old, not that great. Sometimes old people are infirm and have a hard time getting around. And this is news to Siddhartha, right? He's never considered the possibility of ever being anything other than a super hunk. Uh, the next day, so he's very upset by this, and he asks Shun the next day to take him out. And they do the same thing. They steal one horse and buggy. They go out. They're going along the back roads, and this time they see some old guy who's lying next to the edge of the road. And he's very emaciated, and he's like coughing up blood, and he doesn't have anyone around to take care of him. And Siddhartha says, Channa, who is that? And Channa says, well, that's some old guy who doesn't have anyone to take care of him, and he's really not doing too well. In fact, he probably doesn't have that long to live. And this is really shocking to Siddhartha. It's really the first time he's ever even had to think about death and mortality. And now he's confronted with it very immediately. So he goes home, he can't sleep, and he asks Chanda to take him out again the next day, hoping to see something that's going to cheer him up. They do the same thing. They steal the horse and buggy, and they're going along the road, and they see that the man who had been lying by the side of the road yesterday is now dead, laying on a stretcher and being taken off by pallbearers to be thrown in the cemetery. Not exactly the cemetery, but what's called the charnel ground, or this above ground place of disposing of bodies, just like a patch of land where bodies would be thrown and left to be disassembled by wild animals and decomposed through the elements. And so this did not cheer Siddhartha up. It made him even more depressed because now he's seen the reality of death. He goes home, can't sleep, asks Channa to take him out again the next day, hoping this time maybe he's going to see something more pleasant. And they go out, and this time they come across something else unfamiliar to Siddhartha. They see a mendicant, a religious wanderer, a monk, someone who has given up everything that he owned in search of religious truth, and who essentially travels around from village to village, studying with different people, teaching what he has learned, and asking for alms food or asking for donations to eat, to live by, because he doesn't have any money and he doesn't have any real occupation. And the thing that's so startling to Siddhartha of seeing this mendicant is that he seems very content. He has this kind of serene look on his face, and when Siddhartha approaches him, he talks to him and he tells him his deal. And the thing is that this mendicant is really a counterexample to everything that Siddhartha's dad had wanted him to believe. Shuddhodana had tried his entire life to make Siddhartha believe that the things that make you happy are money, power, status, physical pleasure. And this guy, this monk, doesn't have any of those things. He has literally no money. He has no family. He has really nothing but the clothes on his back. And yet he seems very happy, indeed happier than the lords and ladies of the court who were constantly had knives out for one another in his dad's palace, because royal palaces can be places of, well, lots of competitive intrigue and lots of anxiety to hang on to the power that you have. And so seeing this, Siddhartha is really, really rattled. Goes home, and it's nighttime. He goes up to the top floor of his palace, where every night the ladies of his harem had their party, but this time he wasn't there. So they had their party in his absence, and they're all passed out drunk on the floor. Their sort of arms are draped around each other, and some of them are drooling, and they're sort of in these very unbecoming poses. And when Siddhartha looks in, they remind him of the twisted bodies of the charnel ground that he had seen the day before. And so rather than being arousing, which is the whole point of having a harem of ladies to entertain you every night, he feels a sense of disgust and revulsion. And this is his kind of turning away from the worldly life and the trap of the palace. He goes in and has a look at his sleeping wife and son. Rahula, by the way, his son's name means fetters or handcuffs. The fact that his son's name is Rahula suggests that sons are things that keep you fettered, shackled to worldly life. And it's at this moment that he makes up his mind to go ahead and leave the palace without telling anyone in search of the kind of happiness that he had seen in the mendicant that afternoon. And this part of the story, I think, is very difficult, especially for people who are newcomers to Buddhism, because he doesn't even say goodbye to his wife and kid or anyone else. He just leaves. He Irish exits his entire life. He literally sneaks out the back door with Channa's help. And it seems like a kind of callous and cold thing to do. And the thing that Buddhists know coming into the story is the backstory to Siddhartha's life, which is not just that he had lived these 29 years and come to this inflection point, but that he had made the vow many thousands of lifetimes ago to one day become an enlightened being and a Buddha himself, and that those thousands of lifetimes were all leading up to this moment. There were thousands of lifetimes of him gradually perfecting his personality and giving up his attachments so that he would be ready in his final birth to make this great renunciation, this great final renunciation from the home into homelessness, as Buddhists say, homelessness in a positive sense, homelessness as a religious seeker. Um, and it is also, I think, part of the narrative arc of Buddhist storytelling that is unique to religions that believe in reincarnation. So religions like Hinduism, Buddhism, Jainism, the narrative of one person's religious journey takes place over a very long time, over many, many lifetimes, right? And in Western religions, when you only get one life to live, the narrative of a person's religious life and religious conversion have to be confined to a single lifetime, right? So this sort of trope in Christian storytelling where someone is living a wayward life and then they have this conversion experience and they live out the rest of their life as believing Christians, from everything like the story of the conversion of St. Paul to Goethe's Faust to the evil philosophy professor in God's Not Dead. He doesn't get converted until the very last minute of his life when he gets hit by a car. But in every case, you have this moment of redemption, right? So the arc of the story is non-believer, uh, conversion, believer, right? And the fact that the understanding is that we only get one life to live constrains the narrative of one's personal spiritual biography to that of a single life. Not so in religions that believe in reincarnation. And so, for this reason, the account of Siddhartha's great going forth from the palace is more digestible and understandable from Buddhist narrative point of view. So Siddhartha, with Chandra's help, he steals one horse, gets out of the palace without the palace guards noticing, gets a safe distance away, um, and he does everything he can to try to emulate the monk that he'd seen. So he uses his royal dagger to shave off of his hair. He gives his jewelry and his nice clothes to Channa. He wears a simple robe and marches out on his own for 6 years of studying and meditation and thinking alongside any teachers he can find. And the Buddhist scriptures represent Siddhartha studying with other Hindu thinkers of different sects and different philosophical persuasions. They have him living out the last year and a half of his life actually as a Jain, when he is involved in a life of very extreme austerity, sleeping outdoors, eating very little. He's said to have been down to eating a single grain of rice per day. And this he finds to be actually not very helpful because he's so hungry and physically uncomfortable all the time that he can't actually do any meditating or thinking. He's in so much physical distress that he gives up the Jain path. Finally, after this, after a year and a half of being a Jain, he accepts his first proper meal, this donation of a bowl of rice porridge from this girl near Benares. And with his belly full, he sits down under a big Bodhi tree, this sort of mangrove tree, and resolves that he's not going to get up until he experiences enlightenment, final realization. So he's there meditating for 7 weeks, 49 nights and days underneath this tree. And whenever someone gets close to enlightenment in Buddhist cosmology, Mara, the devil figure, finds out about it. So his crystal ball lights up, and he's able to see that someone on Earth is getting very close to enlightenment, and Mara's whole job is to stop that. So he wants to stop Siddhartha, and he immediately dispatches his three beautiful daughters, who go up to Siddhartha and transmogrify into all of these forms of beautiful, alluring women and dance suggestively in front of him, and to try to seduce him off of his seat of meditation. But he merely puts his hands up, doesn't say a word, and signals that he's not interested. Next, Mara sends his terrifying hordes, his army of demons who try to scare Siddhartha off of his seat. So they go and they bellow their trumpets and they shoot their arrows and they throw their spears at him. But Siddhartha merely waves his hand, and the arrows and spears transform into flowers and fall harmlessly at his feet. Finally, Mara himself comes up from the netherworld, approaches the Buddha, gets in his grill, and says, Siddhartha, what right do you have to leave the cycle of rebirth? Why do you think you're so special? What have you ever done to deserve this? And here Siddhartha doesn't say a word again, but simply touches the ground in front of him, signaling that the earth itself is a witness to the many thousands of lifetimes that he has gone through perfecting himself in order to get to this moment. In the Thai storytelling tradition, the earth goddess Tara comes up and confronts Mara and his army and testifies to his previous lifetimes. And she actually has a river of water in her hair, and she wrings out her hair and washes away all of Mara's demon army, securing the final night of meditation that Siddhartha needs to achieve the state of nirvana. Nirvana, as you remember from last class, is the blowing out, the extinguishing of karma such that you don't have any more fuel in the gas tank to push you over to a new rebirth. An extinguishing of kama or sensual desire, which produces more karma, and also an extinguishing of attachments, right? So all of the things that Siddhartha had grown up believing were sources of pleasure and fulfillment, he no longer does. He's just completely unattached to worldly life. And this is the sort of content of the Buddha's realization in his moment of enlightenment, what it actually means for others to experience this detachment, which leads to serenity and which leads to freedom from rebirth. And because he spent so many thousands of lifetimes, so many millions of years getting here, he's not quite sure in this moment what to do next. He simply sits there under the Bodhi tree, stunned for 7 days. It's not until the god Brahma comes down and beseeches him to teach that he's finally moved to share what he's learned first with the gods. So this is again the gods coming and asking for advice from human beings. How do we find ultimate fulfillment and enlightenment ourselves? And Brahma says, well, what you've realized is very profound, and surely not everyone is going to understand it, but at least there are a few people who will be receptive to your message. So this is what convinces Siddhartha, who now has the epithet of the Buddha. Buddha means one who has woken up, one who has woken up to this truth. His first sermon to the gods, which after he's delivered it to Brahma, walks out of the forest and into a nearby deer park, where Siddhartha, now the Buddha, meets up with four of his co-religionists, four of his buddies that he'd been traveling around throughout North India, studying under these different teachers, doing these different religious practices with. When they see him coming out of the woods and they see that he has this halo and serene expression, they realized, Siddhartha beat us. He got to enlightenment first. And so they ask him, okay, you're now the awoken one, so teach us what you know. This is the setting for the Buddha's first human sermon. He teaches to his four friends what he had already taught to the gods. This short sermon is really the teachings of Buddhism in a nutshell. In Pali, it's called the Dhammacakkappavattani Sutta, or the Discourse on the Turning of the Wheel of Dharma. It contains the Four Noble Truths, the essence of Buddhism. And the first truth being that nothing that we ever attain, no amount of success, physical pleasure, status, is really going to make us happy forever, right? Because all of these things will either fade with time or they rest on things that are contingent, right? Our material possessions are based on material things that are impermanent, that aren't necessarily going to last, even if we have a lot of money in the stock market. The stock market's not guaranteed to last forever, right? Um, so these things that just as a matter of experience, they're not going to last forever. But the Buddhist argument is even deeper than that. It's saying that whether or not you get that, you attain these things, you're not going to be happy either way. Because if you're striving after material status accomplishments, striving after moments of physical pleasure, and you don't get them, then that's a source of unhappiness. But even if you do get them, the subconscious knowledge that they're not going to last forever is a wellspring of dukkha. This word that's very hard to translate, but sometimes translated as suffering, but that's not quite right. It really means sort of anxiety or existential distress. Um, Knowing that the stock market's not going to last forever, knowing that your wife might divorce you. This is all a kind of anxiety that's there in the back of the mind, a kind of subcurrent of our subconscious lives that until we give up desiring these things is always going to be there, right? So this is really the first noble truth of Buddhism. The second noble truth is really kind of logically follows from the first. It's that craving, tanha, Trishna, it literally means thirst, thirsting after these things, this money, status, physical pleasure, is the reason why we have this existential distress, either sorrow because we don't get them, or anxiety because we know they won't last. So it's really wanting these things in the first place that are the cause of our human misery, our existential distress. The third noble truth is follows by matter of syllogism or logical proof from the first two. If dukkha, existential distress, is a fact of life, and if craving after material things and status and pleasure is the source of dukkha, then if you get rid of the craving, you get rid of the dukkha. This is the third noble truth. And this is something, the third noble truth is really something uh, very revolutionary in Buddhist thought because there are a lot of Americans, a couple million, who identify as Buddhist today. But I think that a lot of those who do really have this idea that Buddhism is about obtaining happiness and contentment in the lives that we all have, right? So, there's a lot of Buddhists in California who think that, integrating Buddhism into your life, you can still be a Silicon Valley CEO or whatever. But if you just have Buddhism, then you'll learn not to be quite so attached to your Tesla and whatever else. And so, even if it gets blown up, you won't feel quite as sad knowing that you don't have your nice car anymore. Okay, but that's not what the Buddha is saying. The Buddha is saying, no, if you really want to get rid of all of these sources of dissatisfaction, you have to radically reshape your life. And you have to actually get rid of all of your possessions. You have to get rid of any prospect of having any sort of social status. You have to really give up everything. This is what you do when you actually become a monk. I mean, becoming a Buddhist monk means going forth from the home into homelessness, the same way that Siddhartha did, and joining a new community, a new family of monks who are renouncers like you. I mean, you literally get a new name. So when go through the ordination ceremony of becoming a monk and you shave your head the way Siddhartha did, and you put on the robe, you're given a completely new name. And this becomes your monastic name and the name that you're known by. You get a new family in the community of monks that you live with. You become a Buddha Putra, a son of the Buddha, right? So it's the fact that Buddhists wear the ochre robe is actually the ochre is the color that dead bodies would be wrapped in ancient India. It's symbolic of dying to your previous life as a worldly person who had a regular family and job and being reborn in a essentially new identity, right? So this is the third noble truth is a demand to change completely change your outlook on life in such a way that you really become not the same person that you were before. So this is, yeah, a serious commitment for those who do it. And the fourth noble truth is the specific instruction that the Buddha has for living out a virtuous life, the eightfold path of moral action. And I'm not going to spend too much time talking about it. Um, and you'll read about it in the textbook. I will point out that the mental development part of the path relates to meditation, which I'll talk a little bit more about in the next lecture.